Good evening, everyone. Everyone. Um, we have got Susan Lee with us tonight. Thank you, Susan, for joining me once again.
My pleasure.
Now, I we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about. Do you feel guilty over the little things, Susan? Do you feel guilty over the little things?
I think as a general intro to the topic, I think oftentimes we can feel prompted to discuss something that's big. So if somebody does something, big that's annoying, irritating, upsetting, or we likewise do something big, we are motivated to talk about it. It's not, we have to address it. We can't just sweep it under the carpet. So I think it is the little things, the niggles, the irritations, the galling things that we perhaps bottle up and don't actually mention. And as a consequence of that, they can build up. So we might start out in a relationship and we're not, I know you're talking about, do I feel guilty? But we're talking about, in a relationship, say, one person might not mind or might not even notice something initially. I don't know, they sniff a lot, or they scratch, or they pull the hair, or say or what, or eat with the mouth open, or whatever. There can be all sorts of little tiny things that we don't initially notice, but over time can start becoming something that grates. Every time they do it, we stiffen up and we find ourselves feeling irritated. And that kind of, to my mind, is stuff that the little things that can become big niggles, and then we can feel guilty because we're irritated by that, which compounds the problem to a large extent. Because then if we feel guilty because we're irritated and annoyed with our partner or our friend or our parent or whatever, if we're annoyed about that, then it can become a bit of an issue and something that we really, we feel too stupid to actually say, would you mind not doing that? Really, every time you do that, every time you scratch, every time you move, it annoys me or whatever,
Yeah, but even the little things that we do, positive, like open the door for somebody. Now, I'm guilty. I never used to open the door for anybody until I got told off, and now I do. Especially if it's ladies or anything like that, you know, and we just forget about those little bits or a thank you. It doesn't go far, does it really?
Well, there's little good things and there's little bad things that can be factors in our lives. And I think the whole thing that can make a difference to us, the good things that can make a difference to us, is something like somebody smiling. I'll say to clients sometimes, if you're walking down the street and you're in a really good mood and somebody gives you a dirty look, or if you're in a bad mood and somebody smiles and says, hello, sunshine, you're looking wonderful, I love your coat or your scarf or whatever, that can really lift our mood. So the little things can make a huge difference to the quality of our day. And I think in a relationship, if somebody does the little things, they're the things that often make all the difference. It's not the turning up every Friday with a big bouquet of flowers and a bottle of champagne. That might be nice. So after a while, you might find it a bit, here we go again. But I think it's a getting home from work and your partner's run you a bath. Or they say, would you like a drink of tea, honey? Or I got that magazine that you liked, you'd noticed it the other day and I've got it for you. Some of these things might not cost anything, but the thoughtfulness behind it can make a huge difference to how invested we feel in our relationship and how invested we feel our partner is in us. So they're the things, the little things that are positives that, and I mean, quite frankly, I open the door for anybody. If there's somebody behind me, I'll keep the door open, and or letting somebody out in traffic. Or if somebody's just got one thing in front of you in the queue, you just say, do you want to go before me? I've got a trolley, you go first. And so those little things can make a difference. People have started doing that pay forward. And what pay forward is about, quite frankly, I've never done it, but pay forward is when you're in the coffee shop and you pay for a coffee and say the next person who's behind me, I've paid for their coffee. Or sometimes you might do that with a trolley, you know, somebody's shopping. If you're feeling a bit flush and you're in a good mood, you might just say, I'll pay for their shopping. And so little things like that, I mean, they cost money, but little things like holding the door open or smiling or letting somebody out in traffic, those things don't cost anything, and yet they can make a huge difference to somebody's mood, because we don't know what's going on in their lives. And something silly, something tiny, something, you know, that we don't really think about can make a huge difference to how good somebody feels or how bad they feel.
Yeah, I met somebody in the street once, and I said something to them, and it just made them smile, and it just kind of said, "Thank you for making my day," you know. And it's things like that, you know what I mean? So, you know, what is the most common small things? You know, what are the most common small things that
Well, I
we
suppose
do?
there are things like letting somebody out in traffic. It is about
Yeah,
letting somebody go before you in a queue. It is about smiling and holding the door open. It is about perhaps giving somebody a compliment as you're walking down the street, you know, and saying, "Oh, I love your coat. I love your scarf. You're looking lovely." I mean, I do that sometimes. I give that away because I just think, why not? It doesn't hurt to say to somebody, "I love you. Oh, you've had your hair done. You look lovely." Things like that don't cost us anything, and we can feel a bit awkward perhaps at
mm,
first or self-conscious, but nobody's likely to say get lost if you say you look lovely and just keep walking. You're not a stalker, you're not being creepy, you're just giving a throwaway comment. But little things like that where you are being thoughtful, smiling, you know, I'll often, you know, I post on Facebook sometimes and I'll say, give away your smiles, they're free.
yeah,
So when you're walking along the street, good morning, and smile, keep going. You're not being a creepy person, you're just being upbeat and happy. And somebody who's perhaps feeling in a bad, we don't know somebody else's story, somebody is perhaps feeling a bit vulnerable, they've had a lousy start to the day, the kids wouldn't go off to school properly or they're off school, and they're being absolutely a handful. Sometimes people in those situations can feel really uplifted if somebody says, you know, smiles at them. You know, getting somebody at work a coffee, you're making one for yourself, so make them one. And just
yeah,
saying, here you are, you know, little things like that, running a bath for your partner, or when they come in from work, you've made them a brew or a drink or whatever, or you put the chairs outside and you can sit out together and say, the meal's on, or I've got fish and chips tonight, or whatever, and you sat outside having a chat. So thoughtfulness is that, you know, you see a leaflet for a talk that, you know, they'd be interested in, and you just pick it up and bring it home. And again, we're not talking about spending money, we're talking about thinking about having somebody on your mind, and that in itself is a huge compliment and can make somebody feel really, really good.
yeah. Um, how about kind of like cancelling it, like a reschedule, cancelling, then you got to reschedule appointment. You know,
Well, I think if we do that, you know, I mean, I guess, you know, when you get to an adult, you've had that happen where people have let you down at the last minute, and or you've had to let people down yourself at the last minute. You know, if somebody lets you down and it's a meeting or it's a social event or whatever, and somebody just perhaps gets in touch and says, sorry, I can't make it, if they are polite and have a decent enough reason, that might well be okay. But if they do that too often and say, well, I can't come because I'm having my, you know, it's inconvenient for me, I'm having a meal now, or whatever it might be, then eventually you just say, it's fine, you know. And I think we have to protect our own boundaries and just say, okay, I can understand somebody letting me down once, maybe twice, perhaps. But if in a situation, you know, if you've got a friend who is in the middle of a very difficult situation concerning the health of a relative or whatever it might be, you know, they're not necessarily going to be 100% reliable, and that's okay. You have to acknowledge that and make some provision for that within yourself. But if you keep getting let down, or somebody's cancelling meetings or something, get the message, read the room, and
yeah,
appreciate that you're not as high on their list as they might be on yours, and you have to sometimes think about that and revise your own situation. So cancelling things at short notice, I mean, people do cancel things, but we can feel guilty if we have to pull out. But then again, sometimes we might have to, and I think being respectful of how that impacts on the other person is important.
yeah, because they might have plans and everything, isn't it?
Absolutely, they might
Yeah,
have cancelled plans. I mean, you know, if we're all busy people and somebody lets us down at the last minute, we can go, blimey, I could have I mean,
than
that's
this.
happened to me.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's happened to many of us. I could have done something else. There are other things I could have done with that time. You have to respect other people's time, don't you?
yeah, yeah. How about this? Is my big bearer is when you kind of like you're not reply. People are not replying immediately. They're just holding on, and that's my big thing. Where you want an answer, but they don't reply immediately.
Happens a lot, doesn't it? I mean, I've had clients who say they've got, their entire inbox and they just cancel their inbox and say things like, well, if it was important, they'll get back to me. And I just think,
Yeah,
blimey, at the end of the day, it happened to me on Friday. My accountant messaged me and said, I've sent you a copy of your final account, Susan. And that was something like 2:00 on Friday afternoon. And an hour later, I messaged back and said, they've not arrived. I don't know what email you sent them to, but they've not arrived. No reply, no reply, no reply. And then, so again, on Sunday night, I just thought, well, I want to be the first person in the box in the morning. I've still not received them. Midday today. Oh, I've just sent them to you now. And you're like, to me, that smacked a little bit of inefficiency. And so it is, it's about, again, it's about valuing people, being efficient. How professional do you want to look? Whether it's business or not, I think it's about being respectful. So you have to kind of step back and think, hang on a minute, if I behave like this, if I do or don't do this, how is it impacting on the person? But how is it impacting on what they perceive me as? And that is important too.
Oh
so,
yeah, I've learned that. I've learned that definitely in the past. And
Yeah.
I think I've learned it.
Sometimes we
I
might-
think
we
I,
might have.
yeah, I learned it from you when when we've had a chat. So, but because the trouble is, at the end of the day, people want to reply. You're a busy person, and it's like my parents. They want to reply of me sometimes, and I'm there trying to think, what can I do and all this stuff. It's like anything. We're waiting. People waiting for replies, and if people don't answer, we're left in limbo, aren't we? Really?
I mean, sometimes I'll just send a couple of X's, a couple of kisses to, or say in the diary or something, just to let somebody know
Yeah,
that I've read the message and seen it. Because sometimes if you don't get any reply at all, you don't know whether they've got it, not got it, read it, noted it, whatever. So sometimes I'll just send a couple of kisses or something, just to, not to a client, but but just say, okay,
yeah.
you're in the book, and then people know that they are definitely confirmed. And again, it's about respect. And
Of course it is.
you can't expect people to be psychic. They don't know what's going on, whether you've had it or not, or whether it's gone to the right place or not.
Yeah. How about awkwardness? How about clumsy? Being clumsy, being awkward.
Well, I think sometimes we can appear, can't we? I mean, we can appear a bit gauche sometimes. I mean, I'm guessing we've all done it. Sometimes said something that we perhaps think is funny, or a witty reply, or whatever it might be, and the other person's kind of looked at us as if we're, what the heck was that? And sometimes we can appear a bit gauche or a bit inappropriate or whatever it might be. So that can be awkward. Even sometimes, I don't know, with a waiter or a delivery person or something, we can say something and it's perhaps with reflection, we think that was a bit out of context or it wasn't quite right. And sometimes we just have to wear it. Yeah. Sometimes you just have to go, okay. Or sometimes we have to hold our hand up and go, okay. I mean, sometimes I've said something and I'll reflect on it. I think, oh, and I'll say, sorry, that sounded a bit harsh, because the way I've replied, oh, that was fine, or something. And on reflection, I thought that sounded a bit short-tempered, or it sounded a bit quick, or it sounded a bit curt. And sometimes I'll say, oh, sorry, that sounded a bit rough, And often people will say, oh, you're fine. But sometimes acknowledging that, even if they say that was fine, sometimes acknowledging that can make a big difference, again, to the other person realizing that you noticed it and you weren't too happy with it. So again, I call it adulting. Adulting is where we acknowledge that we're grown up, we're responsible for what we said or did, and just being okay about that and being big enough to say, sorry about that. I'm not sure how that came across, and that can be a respectful thing to do.
Yeah, yeah. I used to when I had my stroke, I used to kind of like have conversations with people where I didn't mean to, where and used to say things to people that I didn't mean to, and in the end, I had to explain myself in a way where we could do it, and people used to they they just said no, you're not forgiven, you're not buying, and all this lot. But it's just kind of like it's basically, I reckon it's just holding our tongue in it, really.
Yeah, I mean, my husband had a stroke, and he was a bit Tourette's after it. Sometimes he'd say things, and or I mean, he had this fantastic ability to look angry when his face was in repose, and sometimes people do that, where their face in repose can look, what do they call it, something bitch face or something, resting bitch face. But at the end of the day, it is, and so. And sometimes people look like that when they're not smiling, when they're just in repose. They can look angry or irritated or bad-tempered or whatever it might be. And again, sometimes if we acknowledge that and just say, okay, or make a joke about it, be okay about being self-deprecating, be okay about acknowledging it and laughing at yourself. And that humor's a fantastic cure-all in many situations. If we make a joke or we take ownership of something, people will often be quite sympathetic, like in your case where you were saying you explained yourself and people afterwards say that's okay.
Yeah, I've had carers come in to me because I've got carers, and they sometimes they come in and they're really down and not having a good day, and next minute I'm joking around with them and they're saying, you made my day, things like that. And it's a big thing, isn't it? It's little thing makes it out into a big thing. How about saying no sometimes, though? That's a big question, isn't it?
That's something we've covered before, isn't it? About boundaries, where we can feel guilty. I mean, we're talking about guilt today, but feeling guilty about saying no, and a lot of us are automatically programmed to say yes if somebody else does. Oh, of course, and then afterwards we think about, heck, how am I going to fit that in? And I'm going to have to let somebody else down, and I'm going to have to cancel or reschedule or reorganize my life. And that can kick in a whole lot of guilt. So sometimes just saying no appropriately can make a huge difference. And I've got some trick phrases that are fantastic for saying no without saying no, like, leave it with me. I'll have to think about it. Not right, not right at this moment. I'll have to get back to you. Those sorts of phrases can buy you half an hour, or even a day or two, or get you out of a jam altogether. So sometimes just, using, not saying no outright, but saying no in a way that is a little bit more circumspect can buy you a bit of time and get you off the hook a bit. And sometimes people will learn. Saying no, sometimes actually you need to sometimes teach people that you're not 100% available 100% of the time. Because if you say yes all the time, people think you're available all the time. And whose fault is that? You're responsible for how people treat you. And it's, again, owning that and saying, this doesn't suit me. I'm not available for that.
That's a good idea. When someone phones me up and says, "Are you available?" I said, "No, I'm just doing my hair." How about prioritizing yourself?
Well, I think sometimes, we've got lots of different areas of our lives, haven't we? We've got work, we've got friends, we've got family, and all those things can seem more important, more demanding, more worthy perhaps of our time than we do ourselves. But the truth is, if we run ourselves ragged, if we're always available for everybody and everything, how much use are we? If I had a client and somebody turned up on time and I'm there and I'm like, and I've just had back to back and I've done a few Zoom calls and I've just finished an article or two and I've not really slept too well and I've had to cancel friends going out, how good of a person am I going to be? How good a therapist am I going to be? And that applies to all of us. So if we're not really in a good place and we've not had a half an hour to have a brew sat outside, or meet up with a friend for coffee, or even just go to the shopping mall on our own and have a coffee, or read a book, or take a bath, or whatever it might be, have an early night, we're not able to do those things because we're running ourselves ragged for everybody else, then we're not really in a very good place to do our best work or to be the best friend. So sometimes prioritizing ourselves is about saying no, and being okay about that, not feeling guilty about it, saying, okay, I'm afraid I'm not around then, or I can't do it, or it's not good for me. We don't have to explain ourselves either. That's another thing. We don't need a 15-minute, by the way, I can't do that because of this and that happened and what have you. No, I'm afraid I can't, should be enough. And we have to sometimes educate or re-educate our family and our friends to accept that and not keep pushing and trying to make us feel guilty.
Yeah, but with your job, you take a lot of stuff on from other people. Who do you release yourself to?
I am 100% available when I'm working with a client. And when they've gone, I shut the book, the folder, whatever, shut the notes, and that's gone. I mean, I had somebody yesterday, I had not seen them for about 12 years. Just got in touch out of the blue. He said, look, I'm a bit struggling. Can I come and see you again? I keep people's notes for 7 years and then I have them shredded. So this person, I didn't have his notes anymore. He walked through the door and I knew his entire story.
Yeah.
I remember this is your partner, and I remember you were having a child, and I remember you were doing this job and whatever. And he goes, yeah, absolutely spot on. I remember people, but, half an hour before it arrived or the day before he got in touch, I wouldn't have even thought of his name. And so, I've learned over the years, I mean, I've been, 30 odd years now. I've learned over the years to shut the box, the metaphorical box or file, and it's closed. And when they're with me, I'm 100% available. I do a good job. I'm available for thinking what they need and how the best way to work with them. When somebody's gone, they're gone. And so I'm not cooking a past client for hours after they've left me. But before they come, I'll spend half an hour or so going through the notes. I'm fresh when they walk through the door. And if I haven't got the notes, they're still there in my mind oftentimes.
Brilliant. Really good. How about giving ourselves a treat?
That can be a difficult one, can't it? Am I worthy? Do I deserve this? Is it right that I spend this money or this time, or take half an hour out for me, or go for that walk in the park, or whatever? I should be, I ought to be, I must be doing the chores, doing the shopping, sorting out the kids or my partner, or starting the evening meal early or something. And so sometimes spending money, topping ourselves up with a treat, or buying ourselves a coffee and having half an hour, in the sunshine with a good book or something, we can feel that it's guilty, a guilty thing to do. We're being selfish. But actually, again, doing something like that is often an investment in ourselves. And when we invest in something, we improve its viability. We make ourselves a better person to mix with afterwards. I know taking a break is something that a lot of businesses, people just stopped doing it, particularly when cigarettes stopped being smoked.
Yeah.
Having a cigarette break was a good excuse for 15 minutes outside the front door of the office. And once cigarettes stopped being smoked, a lot of those cigarette breaks got lost. But people used to go out for 15 minutes, come back, and they'd have a whole perspective on something. They might even have found a resolution for something that was on their minds that was a problem, or certainly feel a little bit better, had some fresh air, or whatever it was. And doing that is a really important thing to do. And now that we don't have a cigarette break, we might have a water cooler break, but sometimes that 15 minutes outside the front door, it used to be a companionable time, perhaps chatting with other people. But now that that's gone, that in a way is a shame in a sense, but it is a way of saying I need to sometimes take that 15 minutes outside, have a break, get outside for a coffee or whatever, walk around the car park and recharge my batteries, and it can be an important thing to do.
Yeah, yeah. And I must say, your walks in the mornings, with the canals and everything, that really cheers me up every morning. It's like looking at something and thinking, wow, you just the trouble is with us, so many people got busy lives and they don't actually, go outside and get the fresh air, the morning air, or the birds, and everything, and see what's around us. We're so busy, and
You
then
have to make time for that. I'm up at 4 o'clock to do that at the
yeah,
minute. I mean, most days are, this morning I think it was 10 to 4 when I woke up. So I think about it, and I'm up out of bed about 4ish, and then quick rinse, get dressed, out the, teeth, glass of water, whatever, out the front door. You have to make time for things that are important for you. And so, I mean, actually, at the minute, I justify this by saying, thank goodness I'm out early, because the other day I'd got everything done in the morning by about 10:30. So it was, and then it's really hot and I don't mind, I can just sit there and stew and steam. But sometimes going out early, making time for things that matter to us is an important thing. And again, that is giving yourself a treat, making the effort to do something for you that has meaning and is important and matters. And I mean, for me, nothing is more important than seeing this. I was with this mother swan for the whole 60 odd days when she was sat on that nest, poor love, and feeding her and all the rest of it. And now she's got babies, cygnets, that are tomorrow 2 weeks old. So it's a joy. I was with her when she kicked them in the water, and now every now and again you see them hitching a lift on her back, and it's a treat. I mean, why wouldn't I want to do that? But it does mean you have to make time for that. And
yeah.
Some people might prefer an extra hour or two in bed. For me, it's okay. If I'm tired, I'll go to bed a little bit earlier, and it's worth it to go to bed at 9 o'clock or something, so that I can get up early and have had enough sleep. And then I'm out early and feeding my birds and my ducks and my swans and my moorhen and whatever the heck,
Yeah. I think sometimes we've got to look at the taking me time, though, isn't it? What you do in the morning, because it's most important to make your day fresh.
Yeah. And buying something for yourself, heck, if you're working or if you've got an allowance, and you're allowed to take some money out of that purse for yourself. And that might be a coffee, or it might be topping up your favorite item. It might be buying a book, paying for some music, whatever it might be. Sometimes allocating some money for yourself isn't an indulgence. If you're spending money excessively all the time and there's nothing left for other people, then that's a different matter. But an occasional treat for yourself is a right and reasonable and fair thing to do, where you feel better because of it, and you allow yourself to feel better because of it, as opposed to guilty or selfish or greedy or self-indulgent or something.
Yeah. Do you ever treat yourself while you're out? Do you ever look at, say I want a treat, have a cream cake or a coffee?
Well, yeah, I mean, probably 2 or 3 times a week, but I tend to, yesterday morning, when I'm writing articles, I like to take my sort of almost ready article, and I'll go somewhere like a Costa Coffee or a coffee shop of some kind.
Yeah.
I take it with me, and then I will proofread it. And I usually have a cappuccino and a toasted tea cake, and I sit and I read it through and make corrections and things. And if I'm meeting a friend for lunch, I'll often aim to get there probably 30 minutes early before them. So I will sit down and I'll do a bit of work and what have you. So yeah, I'm not short on treating myself. I don't necessarily buy myself. I'm not very good at buying clothes and what have you. But I mean, at the weekend, I bought myself a couple of pairs of sandals.
Oh, well done.
Because I thought, well, yeah, I know, because you should have seen the ones I have. They're almost sellotape and plastic bands, by the time if I throw stuff in the bin, nobody's going to ransack it out. But at the end of the day, buying new things, I bought myself some new trousers, because my casual everyday slopping around in trousers, were effectively all the elastic waistband had gone. So yeah, I'm not I'm not behind the door, and but unfortunately, I can afford to do it if I want. And I think when you can afford to do things, you don't have the same urgency to do it.
Yeah.
You know, I think people who perhaps are a bit more on a budget it's a whole different dynamic when you can afford to buy something. I mean, for example time, I remember taking my sister's kids out for an afternoon, for a day out. And the first time we went to a cafe restaurant thing, the three of them had would you like another drink? Yes, please. Would you like something else to eat? Yes, please. Whatever. And they just kept on and on and on and on and on. And I just kept buying them because I just thought, okay, let's do that. The next time we went out, I said, would you like something? No, I'm fine, thank you. And I think that illustrates what I'm saying, in a sense that if we think we can't have things, we have a different attitude, a different approach. But if we know we can have, within reason, whatever we want, that adds a whole new balance to our attitude to it. You find if you can have whatever you want, you're kind of like, oh, I'm okay, thanks, I don't really need it. If you know you can keep going back to the buffet, the first time you go, you're not going to be piling the plate up with a stack of food. You know you'll get just a bit of what you want and eat what you want, and then, I can go back and get a bit more if I want it. So it allows us to be a little bit more circumspect in how we organize ourselves, how we take things. And I think it's an important lesson to know that I don't need to have everything right now, but allow myself the luxury of buying things as and when I need to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Really know what you mean. I was just looking at it. It says, when you said about shopping, it was going, leaving the shop empty-handed. You know.
Yeah. Well, if
Oh,
you've
that
gone
was
in the
just
shop and
yeah.
the poor creature has spent ages, at a shoe shop, can I try these, and can I try this size and that size, and can I have both shoes, and that colour, and have you got this and that and the other, and you spend ages and ages in the shop, and then you realise you don't want anything. That can be a real guilt-inducing thing, even if the shop's not especially busy, and you think, well, I kept them occupied, they didn't have anything else to do. But even so, we can feel a bit bad about having kept somebody occupied when we've been there a while. I mean, in a restaurant perhaps, and we get in there and we realise there's nothing on the menu that we really want to eat, and what about this, and have you got that, and can you cook this for me, and yes, all right, whatever, and then eventually go, actually, you know what, I'm not in the mood, I don't want anything. So that can be a guilt-inducing thing, except that we have to acknowledge that people are entitled to shop around and maybe see if they like what your offering is and what have you. I mean, conversely, I've had people phone me up and chat to me for a while about what's going on in their lives and whether or not I can help them. And occasionally people will say, I'll think about it. And that's absolutely fine. I'll say, phone a few other people up and see how you get on with them and see if you like what they have to say. Because it's important that people do suit themselves and find something to suit them. But we can feel guilty when we go in a shop and we spent ages and then actually look like we're coming away with nothing.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it shopping because you go in there, your wife's in the shopping, and next minute you're kind of like waiting for ages. Then I have a joke with the shopkeeper sometimes. I says, "Any chance for a coffee?" Or,
oh, really?
Yeah, just for joke. Yeah. Why not? You know what I mean? But the trouble is, it's just the little things, what we do in life, and sometimes, we look at these little things, and sometimes they could help or hinder you. But most of all, it's about kind of like, do we feel guilty? You know, that's a decision that we all got to make, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
And
I think, the little things, but I do think it's the little things that are often more important.
Yeah.
In many ways, the impact on us more perhaps than the big things, because if something big annoys us, or if something big makes us feel good, we're far more likely to acknowledge it, discuss it, talk about it. It's a problem, thrash it out, address it. Whereas if it's the little things that gradually accumulate, we can start feeling guilty that we're being a bit of a nag, that we're being a bit oversensitive, perhaps a bit over picky, and that can be quite a difficult situation to address because we can feel guilty about feeling the need to address it. So absolutely, definitely, I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, we can, we can be, and also we can be picky over the little things, can we? We can, it's like in the mornings in our household. It's like, you know, where's the bowl? Where's the cornflakes? Where's the, everything else? We all wake up when we're drowsy, but the trouble with me, I'm different because I wake up and I kind of get everybody laughing and smiling because I look at it as another day, and you take one day, one step at a time, and that's it. Susan, thank you so much for that. That
My
is,
pleasure.
I just love your articles and love going through them. And guys, do you feel guilty over the little things, or are you like me? Sometimes you look at the little things and you think, "Wow, what can we make of them? Can we make it much bigger, that we can bless somebody, or we can kind of like make somebody's day?" And sometimes we need to put the negative thoughts behind us and kind of like not feel guilty. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. See you later. Bye bye.